Welcome to the 2024 CPG Growth Leaders webinar. And for this webinar, we're going to be focusing on large manufacturers. I am Sally Lyons-Wyatt, and I am the EVP and Chief Advisor for CPG and Food Service at Circana. And I am joined today with Kara Lois, who is our North America lead for thought leadership. Hopefully you joined us last week, where we featured 3 of our small manufacturer growth leaders. Today, we're thrilled to have 2 executives from the larger 1 billion plus in annual sales group. And they're going to join us as we kind of discuss the different levers they pulled in order to drive volume in 2024. This is going to be a little different style of webinar than you're used to. Usually we have a live panel, but due to scheduling conflicts, this is going to be a news style format that we want to make sure that you get to hear directly from our executives from ELF and Bausch Lomb. This is our 13th annual report, and first to compare private and public CPG company performance. In the report, we analyze over 700 CPG manufacturers with greater than $100 million in sales. The companies analyzed are both established and emerging. We share the top 5 growth leaders among companies that are $8 billion plus in annual retail sales. We do top 5 of 2.5 to 8 billion. And then we do another top 5 for the 1 billion to 2.5 billion. We then share top 10 among 500 million to a billion, and another top 10 of 100 to 500 million. In a moment, Kara's going to share how we decompose the levers, but we also look into other insights around the success of these companies in addition to what we do just from the numbers alone. In fact, that's why we're here today. We do these webinars. It's kind of like our last leg of a learning journey. We want to listen to what ELF and Bausch Lomb have witnessed in their own companies for the past year. And then we've also spent weeks talking to other companies and also researching their performance, both from the data, but also primary research. And once we finish here, Kara and I will go back and we will begin to write the story of the 2024 growth leaders. It will be in a published report that will come out in the first week of April. We actually will unveil our findings at our growth summit, which is also the first week of April. And then on that Wednesday, April 9th, is when the report will come out. So yes, this is a little bit of a teaser campaign. Until we release the report, we will not be posting this deck. If you have any questions, though, please put them into the platform and we'll answer them after the webinar concludes. But we won't be taking questions live today. We hope you enjoy learning about the strategies and tactics that these 2 companies have deployed in 2024. So Kara, would you please provide a little bit more context around growth leaders before we introduce ELF and Bausch Lomb executives?
Absolutely. So first of all, we are assessing CPG performance relative to the peer set of similarly sized companies, just those 5 groupings that Sally just talked about. And to measure performance, we're focusing on the retail environment, looking at 1, the organic sales growth for 2024 versus year ago in both dollars and volume. And secondly, share performance within each manufacturer's respective categories, also in dollars and volume. Now, these 4 measures are assessed relative to the range of their similarly sized peer set to create a composite score and then ranked accordingly. So as a result, our growth leaders are leading in top-line sales growth, they're generating volume demand, and they're winning share versus competitors in their categories. Then, of course, comes the fun part. We decompose the performance of leaders versus the rest of market across a wide range of drivers. Sales, price, marketing, supply, everything that you see here. And before we reveal which companies led those rankings, let's take a moment just to reflect on the total market environment for 2024. Across total CPG, sales grew 3% in dollar sales. This is a number that's similar to historical averages, except for the past couple of years, of course, which have been marked by high inflation in the last 2 years. And before that, the volume growth due to the pandemic. Now, high inflation from the last 2 years has slowed to 2% from the double digits that we saw in 2022. While volumes, which were negative the past couple of years, have moved back into positive territory, supported by the unwinding of the pandemic and the high food inflation, which is driving a greater share of stomach for the retail environment than the food service environment. And within the market, 2024 was characterized by other shifts, most notably strong shifts to value channels. Now, also in 2024, what was different was a stronger relative performance of smaller CPGs and private label. This bar chart here shows the distribution of sales across the different sizes of manufacturers. And the red and green numbers in the middle show first, in the first column, how this distribution has changed from 2020 to 2023. And you can see there that small manufacturers, particularly in that 100 million to 500 million bucket, grew most, as well as private label and the largest companies. In 2024, more growth shifted across to smaller companies and private label. And contributing to this environment was the brand bifurcation driving growth in premium and store brands and squeezing the middle. And as well, we also saw lower barriers to entry for smaller players boosted by emerging channels. Now, overall, as I mentioned, the market saw significant growth from value channels, particularly the growth contribution from mass, club, and e-commerce channels collectively accounted for 85% of total CPG growth in 2024 versus a year ago. And that's compared to being about 48% of sales. So when we look at our growth leaders and their share performance in different channels, we looked at the average weighted category dollar share change in different channels for the largest company, for the leading companies. And first, looking at those that are 1 billion plus and above, you can see that generally similar share performance across different channels. But when we go to the below 1 billion, we see that there are much higher share gains and performance in the mass, club, and e-commerce channels for these smaller players. And looking at growth drivers of our leaders in the last year, we've plotted here what drives the higher growth rates of the growth leaders versus the rest of the market. So the numbers in the bars are the breakdown of how many percentage points higher is a dollar growth for the winning companies versus all other, and what is that attributed to? And you can see that for our largest CPGs, those 1 billion plus, stronger distribution and less velocity decline. So that looks positive, but if you see below the actual numbers, it's a less decline in velocity, which accounted for most advanced growth. Meanwhile, on our smaller CPGs, more so distribution being the key component here that drove the advanced growth, but also velocity driving higher growth rates as well. And in both groups, what's interesting is that higher price mix was also achieved by the leaders. You can see those pink bars. There was about a point or two of higher price mix. And this is generally, however, a reflection of the categories that those companies are playing in rather than actually driving more price. In fact, when we go down and compare to like in the same categories, we see that those leading companies are generally moving price mix on par with their respective categories.
All right, so now I have the distinct pleasure of announcing the top growth leaders across each of the revenue bands. Some of these are frequent repeaters. In fact, Constellation has been on this list 12 times out of 13 years that we've done the report within that 8 billion plus group, which is astounding. The other winners, if you will, within the 8 billion plus are Coca-Cola. They've been on the list 8 times. P&G has also punched their name onto this list 9 times. And the other two topping the list would be Unilever and Kimberly-Clark. Moving to the 2.5 to $8 billion top five is Celsius, Chobani, who has been a 9-time growth leader, Driscoll's, Ferrara, and Frenary. So we're excited for those 5 as well. And then rounding out that the top billion plus group is the 1 billion to 2.5 billion in revenue sales with ELF, Fresh Pet, Daisy, Bellring, who makes Premier Protein, Bausch & Lomb, and that really is an astounding list. You can see it crosses food and non-food alike. It's important to note that there are some companies that have actually moved up from the smaller groups in revenue. For example, Daisy Brand has been a growth leader 6 times before, but in the below $1 billion group. So congratulations to them, and congratulations to all of our billion-plus growth leaders for 2024. Now, moving to the 1 billion and below, a few newer names on this list. In the $500 million to $1 billion awarded companies, we find Poppi, which actually had some exciting news last week, being acquired by PepsiCo. Milo's has made our top ranking list 5 times in the last 6 years. And Breathe Life was one of our panelists last week in the webinar. If you didn't get a chance to listen to that, you can hear Bree, TJ Moore from Nutrabolt, who is also on this list. They have C4 in their portfolio. And also a special story from King Arthur, which I'll get to in just a second. Another fun note is Idahoan has been a growth leader in each of our 13 studies. There is no other company that has done that, especially in this 1 billion and below. In fact, if you look across both lists, there's no other company. Constellation is close with 12 out of 13. And by the way, if you're interested, we did have executives from Idahoan and Beatbox last year with very interesting stories. That webinar is posted on our Circana.com website. So feel free to go up and listen to it if you want to learn their stories, but please don't do it quite yet. Wait till after we're done. Now let's move to that last top 10, the 100 million to 500 million. Sol de Janeiro, Chomps, Good Culture top the list. And we also, I kind of gave just a little bit of a peek. Kim Stellavato from King Arthur gave a really cool story about the rise to this list. And yes, that was a pun, but it was intended to. But that was a really cool story about how their company is centuries old, not just years old, but centuries old. And how they made it to the list this year is really a fun story. So give that webinar from last week a listen when you have time. Kara and I had the distinct pleasure of talking with Lori Lamb, who's the Chief Brand Officer from ELF, and John Ferris, who is the Executive Vice President of the Consumer Division of Bausch & Lomb. To get us started, we asked both of them about the drivers to their success in 2024. So I would like to first let you listen to what Lori from ELF had to say.
We had several drivers of success in driving 24 consecutive quarters of consistent growth. And I would say it really starts with our core position. We are really ahead of the trend with first to mass innovation and disruptive marketing, which leads to our second point, which is our value proposition. We actually have a lower AUR and delivering consistently higher quality products to our consumers. And it's also tied to what I would say is the third point in our success of driving consistent growth, which has been tied to where you can find us, our distribution. We have wide distribution. We're really proud of it in terms of being where our consumers are, even if they shift around a little bit. You know, we've seen that there's been more traffic that has gone to dollar stores, but you can also find us at Ulta. You can also find us at Sephora. And not to mention that ELF is actually the only top 5 mass cosmetics brand with an owned site, ensuring that you can always find us wherever you are shopping. And I think that's really an important part. Lastly, I would add from a retailer perspective, we've been consistently the number one productive brand carried by our global retailers. And that's measured on a dollar per foot basis, which has been a really strong point in driving success and the partnerships that we need with our retailers.
Sally, I found it really interesting that ELF found a value proposition in what has been a saturated market for years. The proposition of lower average price for quality, first to mass innovation, disruptive marketing, and distribution meeting consumers where they are.
I actually agree. And to actually call out being the number one productive brand was pretty impressive if you think about the size of the market they're competing in.
Yeah, and I found John's answer from Bausch and Lomb's 3 drivers really interesting as well. Let's listen to him.
When we look at our business, really lean on 3 drivers. First being brand building. Brands, winning in a consumer CPG business happens at the brand level. So we're always investing behind building our brands. Secondly, we're focused on innovation, bringing meaningful innovation to consumers that really makes a difference in their life. And then third, we've leaned strongly into digital commerce. So digital commerce has been a growth engine for us over the past several years, not just 2024, but we continue to lean into it to add more resources and to really strive to develop that channel.
John touched on areas that many big companies are looking at: innovation, brand building, but it was really the comments that he made about meaningful innovation, which I translate into being more relevant innovation, given that we're all on screens, we're all having impact to our eyes. And so it makes sense that they were able to find that meaningful innovation.
Yeah, and also how they are investing in their brands, as some companies have backed away from the investments on some brands due to many reasons. But these factors, coupled with focus on digital commerce, seems to be the right combination for them to gain their volume sales.
Well, both Lori and John actually also talked about challenges. It wasn't all a bed of roses in 24. So before we take a listen to them, is there anything that you want our audience to pay attention to?
Yes, I think we're all facing macroeconomic headwinds and industry shifts that we talked about at the beginning of the call. So looking to listen to what's distinct about how they're addressing this evolving market. Let's start with John.
Certainly 2024 was not without its fair share of challenges. I think like many other, certainly consumer healthcare brands, we faced retail disruption, specifically in the drug channel, which had traditionally been a very important growth driver for our business. So as that channel experienced difficulties, we had to make sure that we re-engaged with those shoppers and picked them up elsewhere. The macroeconomic factors, the consumer price sensitivity after years of inflation, right? And we have great brands and we invest in exceptional sales and marketing to make our brands worth it to the consumer. But that certainly was a headwind facing our business as well. And that consumer is increasingly focused on value, right? Bring me something that really improves my life. And if you do, I'm willing to pay for it. And then third, just the continued media evolution. The way we engage, the way consumers learn about brands and engage with brands just continues to become more fragmented. It offers a lot of opportunities for personalization, but it also means that your marketing has to continue to evolve at a pretty quick pace.
Bausch and Lomb's challenges were vast: drug channel disruption, consumers seeking value. And I liked what he said also in that video around consumers saying, bring me something that will really improve my life. When we talk about value, we always say that it's not always about price, and he zeroed in on that. Price is important for everyone. I don't care what company you work for. Price is probably one of the hardest things to get right when you think about the price value equation. But it's definitely one where consumers need to make sure that they feel there's value in what they're paying for. Value means different things to different people. The other thing that I liked is that he mentioned about media evolution, and that they actually turned that challenge into a success with their personalization approach.
Yes, and that was actually something similar to what ELF said. It regarded how their challenges were actually their opportunities. Let's play that video.
My observation is that most of the key challenges were actually really opportunities for ELF. We definitely saw a slowing beauty category, particularly in cosmetics, where after years of strong growth, the category slowed down to single digits. And mindful consumption is something that we've seen, right? Among raising prices everywhere, nearly in every category, including beauty. Beauty was definitely not, limited to that. And we saw middle income households starting to behave a little bit more like lower income households, in the sense that there was a little bit of pullback or more consideration sets that were put before spend was being made. And that actually became opportunities for us, because I go back to our value proposition and the fact that we are delivering quality products at, oh my God, value, right? We're delivering really great value to the consumer. And that's been something that actually really worked for us in 2024, was I think a driving force when we saw the beauty industry slow down a little bit. But also we've seen that carry into 2025 amidst some uncertainty. People are still really excited about the fact that they can come to ELF and find a $2 lip liner and still be able to drive purchase an $8 laminating brow gel. So you can stretch your brow appointments. So I think it's really met the consumer where they are, and it's been a core strength of ours.
24 was definitely tough for so many. Slowing category sales that she talked about is something that many companies can relate to. But ELF not only provided value via the retail price, but they drove a value proposition that actually was one that didn't compete with just retail, CPG retail. It actually went outside. And I know that we're focused on non-food today, but there is best practice for food and beverages too. Retail is still less expensive than going out to dinner, if you're talking about food and beverage, or going to a salon or an esthetician, if you're talking about beauty enhancements. And our industry really does need to amplify that. I think that is one of the advantages that we have in CPG retail.
Absolutely. So let's shift gears and talk about the consumer. Both of these companies, as we know, gained volume share, keeping and winning more consumers. Let's listen to what John had to say about that.
First, let's start with the consumer. Again, the consumer is increasingly savvy. They're looking for personalized solutions that uniquely meet their needs. There's a sense of transparency, right? Both in how you communicate with that consumer and also what's in your product and what's not in your product. So those expectations just continue to get higher. But again, it offers unique opportunities that didn't exist before, right? So I was raised in an era of marketing that said you can't be all things to all people. And now I challenge my teams to say, why can't we, right? The tools are increasingly there to do so. From a shopper perspective, again, it's this sense of, although the growth in inflation has come down and is more normative, there have been, multiple years of price increases, right? And the shopping basket for the consumer costs 25 or 30% more than it did just a few years ago. So that consumer is just increasingly price sensitive, price savvy, right? They're shopping channels for price and value. And again, it just elevates the bar for a company like Bausch & Lomb to both bring meaningful innovation that the consumer is willing to pay for, that they see the value in, and making them understand, the value in choosing your brand, that the brand has, the brand has value or provides value to their life, but you need to double down on making sure that the consumer understands that. And then the third is just, digital commerce, right? It's just, certainly, there was an explosion that started when we all went into lockdown in 2020, and that has tapered down into, let's call it, more normative growth rates, but it's still an increasingly large share of our growth, and I believe of the industry growth. Consumers are never going back to the day where they exclusively shop in store, right? There will be a role for brick and mortar. There will be a role for the omni-channel retailer that has brick and mortar and has digital online. And then there's the pure play online, right? That today is mostly Amazon. But increasingly we have to develop unique strategies to reach the shopper who prefers each of those channels.
I loved what he said about that he challenged his team to say, why can't we be all things to all people if we have the right tools?
Indeed. And last year, if you remember, we talked about Chobani and other companies being consumer obsessed as well. I know consumer centricity will definitely be a part of our report, but what is fascinating is the different approaches. So, for example, John talked about having products that bring value to lives and ensuring consumers understand that. And he also spoke about the role science plays for their credibility and consumer trust. Many companies have scientists, researchers, et cetera, on staff. However, they don't always put them front and center to gain the trust of the consumer and manage that message through all touch points. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Consumers get their health information from a lot of influencers today, right? And so it's very important. We feel it's very important for Bausch & Lomb in the eye health space to be one of those credible sources of truth, right? Which means then that our science has to be, frankly, exceptional, right? And the data has to really be sound before we bring something to market. Because if it's not, the consumer's going to see through that. They're going to check it with their network, right? They're going to validate what you do, whereas in the past, maybe they would have just trusted you. In the past, we'd say we want to be the one voicing our science. We lean into now physicians, key opinion leaders who have an online following amongst consumers. Right? So they hear it from their trusted source as opposed to just from Bausch & Lomb in a commercial or at a website. And we also are working with consumer influencers, and that's a little more challenging, right? To make sure that the science comes across in the right way and it's credible.
John definitely made some great points, especially how they're balancing influencers versus science-backed facts. Kara, you mentioned companies being consumer obsessed. So now let's listen to what Lori had to say about ELF.
ELF has really multi-generational appeal, right? We're the number one teen Gen Z brand. We've also been the number one purchased brand amongst Gen Alpha and millennials. And that sort of anchors around 2 points. The first point is consistency. It's consistency in our value proposition, in taking consumer feedback and building that into our pipeline, in bringing the best of beauty to every eye, lip, face, and consistency and also product quality and improving the product offerings that we're also delivering. This is one thing that I think is the reason why we are able to be so successful with very different consumer cohorts. The other part, it goes back to something I had mentioned previously, which is ELF is really an incredible basket builder. And the consumers who purchase us almost see us as ELF was a savvy purchase. It was a savvy investment for me because I can buy a $2 lip pencil, because I can give myself an $8 lip oil and feel really great about that, because I know the prestige comparison is $40, because I'm able to stretch between brow appointments, for example, with that great laminating brow gel. And the ability for ELF consumers to feel I've scored a deal with ELF, it doesn't matter what age group you are. And I think we've also seen the amazing campaign work that we've had, which has been able to speak to different consumers. And one of the things that I really, really find very rewarding about this is our ability to be inclusive in who we're talking about and who we're talking to, and also who we're talking with when we're actually building our brand.
Multi-generational basket building. Well, that's what I heard from Lori, but it's not what I always hear from other companies. That definitely has helped them this past year, as well as sets them up for future growth too.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I asked her another question about where she saw future trends for shoppers and retailers.
I believe the tell me, show me model of social selling and social commerce will continue to grow in its ability to influence consumption patterns and what we call edutainment. This is definitely not a prediction by any means. This is simply a statement and an observation, a statement of an observation that we're seeing. And it's no surprise if you look at beauty and personal care, it is still continues to cite, if not top 3, but definitely the top product category in terms of just US TikTok shop sales, to take as an example. And I was surprised to see that it was above even electronics, and these are trends that I do feel is going to continue to shape. I think it also has pivoted to the fact that we have younger consumers coming in now. I think this is a direct correlation to the fact that access to social media and access to platforms and devices, if you will, has a correlation to the way that the shopping landscape has changed, right? 30% of parents with children between 6 to 11 years old, so that's me, have reported actually purchasing makeup for their children, right? And then 46%, nearly half of them, reporting that they've purchased skincare for their kids. So I do think that as the beauty industry has evolved, the consumption patterns, the way that they shop has changed, but also we've welcomed in new consumers who are finding, be it skincare, which we are really proud of our sun care offering that we were able to offer, many different SPF ranges, many different formats and textures, depending on how you want your sun care, but also at an incredible affordable price of $12 when you're looking at sun care, sometimes with other prestige inspiration that can cost anywhere from $36 upwards. And that being able to do that when nearly 2/3 of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck is an incredible feat.
Social selling and social commerce are and will continue to disrupt not just ELF, but all CPG companies. In fact, I would say CPG and GM, if we're really being honest. In fact, I actually think we are seeing the future of retail unfolding right in front of our own eyes.
Indeed. But we know that companies are still learning with AI, and that was voiced both by ELF and Bausch & Lomb. So let's listen to how they're leveraging AI today.
It has evolved. We certainly started some of that in 2024 with AI. We're leaning into it even more in 2025. And we see it as really transforming our marketing mix as we move into 26 and beyond. I think it's an opportunity for hyper personalization in a way that you just couldn't practically do from a resource perspective in the past. It also gives you that ability to learn so quickly, right? To test and learn and roll out new concepts. I started my career back in the days of when you would launch one campaign every 2 years and you would spend 18 months developing that campaign. Right now, now we're doing it, it's almost like we're going to do it in 18 days. So Bausch & Lomb as a company has 4 business units. Consumer healthcare is one. But in our other business units, the commercial teams are applying AI. We're applying AI in our supply chain, in our internal functions. So, I think, again, we're probably in the middle of the pack as far as companies applying that. But, it's just the number of applications just continue to increase and just continue to evolve and get better. So we started that journey, but, I'd say we're still at the early stages, but we have a vision to really lean into that.
Bausch & Lomb seems very similar to other companies that we talk to using AI for marketing mix, test and learn, supply chain. And I liked what they were calling their hyper personalization. I actually think that when you see what's happening in the world and all the tools available, hyper personalization is something I think all companies can strive for. But there's other ways to really embrace AI. So let's listen to what Lori has to say about how ELF is adopting AI.
So the question, of course, when it comes to AI is not when, but it's how will we adapt and how will we stay ahead of the AI revolution. At ELF, we have an expression of keeping the ELF up. It's note that AI is driving radical advancements in the way that we work faster than I think the world can keep up. So for us, I would say we really are in the early innings, but moving very rapidly to unlock AI's potential, and we're using it in ways, I would say probably 3 ways. One is to scale efficiency. The second one is to really enhance productivity. And the third, which is probably more of another phase of ours, but it's to eventually optimize our data analysis and our decision-making in real time. So we've actually built, our CDO has actually, along with the team, built an internal AI pilot that has actually rolled out to the full enterprise. And it's helping to accelerate our employee adoption of AI-driven content creation and productivity. And one critical part of this, and there is AI considers, it really takes some considerable upskilling, right? You're talking about employee upskilling and building pathways to how to use AI excellence. And that's definitely underway for us. We're also building in the proper safeguards to ensure brand integrity and platform safety. So these are all really critical parts. I would sum it up by saying keeping the ELF up with AI is definitely something that is not just vital to an organization. I think for ELF, it's actually going to be part of the way we do business.
What I found impressive about what she said was to hear that ELF has an enterprise-wide AI pilot to support the adoption of AI in their organization. Because really, to get the full effects of AI, it's there, but we need to upscale our employees to use it actively and to use it effectively. This has to be a best-in-class approach.
Yeah, you know what? I agree. And I also love the whole keeping the elf up. They have their own kind of moniker that is just a call to action that they have. They've been able to use AI to scale efficiency, enhance productivity, also be able to provide real-time decision making. So agility is definitely something that's a result of finding the efficiencies from AI at ELF and others. And AI is here, and it will continue to disrupt and the old norms, right? So it's going to disrupt the old norms, force agility into all companies, but the ones that are able to action it will continue to be leading companies. And our conversations continue to evolve from talking about AI and kind of that impact. When you think about culture, culture is definitely influenced by AI, but honestly, some of these companies have a culture that can stand on its own. So let's hear what Lori had to say about ELF's culture.
I think when you look at ELF, when you first walk into any ELF office, the first thing that you'll see prominently written on the wall is bold disruptors with kind hearts. And that is really, I would say, the ethos of the brand, but our culture itself is actually built on something that we call high performance teamwork that has been instilled in, something that our CEO, Tarang Amin, is practicing every single day as a role model. And it's built on these pillars of passionate relationships, which means you're building trust, which fuels collaboration amongst the team. It's also built on a pillar of healthy conflict. So really never compromising and always sharing feedback with each other, mutual accountability, and holding your peers to, I would say, a higher bar. And all of this to say that culture is built on having each other's back at ELF. So not only is it critical to our success, it's critical to my success to be able to drive what I do, but it's also the foundation that ELF is built on. So company culture, I would say, is a vital, critical part to ELF and its ability to move as fast as we have been able to do and to continue being those bold disruptors with kind hearts.
Bold disruptors with kind hearts. You have to love that.
Yes, and she talked about some of the key words of what is the true mark of winning companies: trust, collaboration, passionate relationships, and a pillar of healthy conflict, right? We don't all agree, but we have healthy conflict. Definitely a dynamic and a fun culture that's helping them achieve the successes that they have had so far. So now let's listen to what John had to say about the culture at Bausch & Lomb.
We have a culture that's willing to try new things, right? You never fail if you've learned from it. So our culture starts in our purpose. And our purpose at Bausch & Lomb is to help people see better, to live better. And Bausch & Lomb is a 170-year-old plus company that has been well known over the years for innovations in optics, in eye health. So everything we do as a company starts there. I think that is unique. That is one of the unique things we bring to the space. I don't think it's cliche to say that everyone comes to Bausch & Lomb every day thinking about how we help people see better to live better, right? And we feel a stewardship over that brand and the company given the 170-year history. I think Bausch & Lomb is also somewhat at a sweet spot in size. We're large enough that we have scale, that we have great scientific and R&D resources, that we have a manufacturing network that can be very efficient, but we're small enough, or let's say too small to be able to become bureaucratic and win. Okay, so we don't have a lot of internal bureaucracy. I've used the term, we're maybe the smallest of the big OTC consumer healthcare companies. And I think that's a real advantage. We can still move fast. We can make decisions fast. We can experiment with things. We can try new things and win or learn. But we have a culture that isn't afraid to take risks, that will lean in. And again, because we're just small enough that I think our decision making is agile and quick and fast, but we're large enough that it's good quality decision making as well.
He's right that they are in a nice place from a culture standpoint, being both the smallest of the big, allowing them to be agile, which you just talked about. Agility and speed to market really is critical in this environment, and it has been for a while.
All right, Kara, we're down to our last question. And it was basically, what did they both think their opportunities would be in the rest of this year? And we know that there are headwinds, right? Everyone has the looming tariffs, the administration regulations, all those headwinds that are out there, but both of them focused on the positive outcomes that they're expecting for 2025. So let's hear from John first.
First, the way we live our lifestyles today really, unfortunately, maybe for consumers, but fortunately for a company like Bausch & Lomb and eye health, the way we live our lives, our digital lifestyle has an impact on our eyes and our eye health. Okay, and we see that increasingly as we go out and speak to consumers. So that's a great underlying tailwind for our category and for our brands. One specific area is in dry eye. Doing what we're doing right now, you do not blink with the same blink rate that you would if we were just out and about in the world. That impacts your tear film. That leads to increased symptoms of dry eyes. We acquired the Blink brand of dry eye drops about a year and a half ago from J&J. We relaunched that in 2024, was a significant growth driver for us, and it continues to be now in 2025. We're launching some new innovation in that brand, including a product called Blink NutriTears. So this is a clinically proven supplement that helps relieve or address symptoms of dry eyes. So that franchise is off to a great start already in 2025. It plays in the right space, right? That's a long-term secular growth category. I don't think any futurist predicts a future where we're going to look at fewer screens for fewer hours of the day, right? It's just part of how we live our lifestyle. And so we're really excited about the opportunity for our Blink family of products. We've had a lot of success with Lumify eye drops. They whiten and brighten the eyes. That's this sense of a healthy appearance is also a part of how consumers view being or feeling healthy today. It's not just about the absence of illness. So that's another brand that continues to grow. We've launched a preservative-free version of those eye drops at the start of 2025. So we're excited about that franchise. But then we're also really excited about the opportunity for increased personalization. So I spoke to some of that as far as media and how you engage with consumers, but it's also the opportunity for us the opportunity exists today to engage with consumers and let them build their own products, that uniquely meet their needs using a digital interface, and then shipping them a custom product directly to their home. So we're exploring, at least one opportunity in that space right now that we're hoping to launch later this year. So we're really excited about that, how we move away from not just our media not being one size fits all, but maybe our products not being one size fits all.
Speaking to consumers, especially about the pain points we all feel from eyes, strained eyes, dry eyes, etc. These are the conversations, really understanding what the consumer need is and what they're willing to pay for, that will help ensure that their innovation launches are successful. These are developing products consumers need to live better lives.
The other thing I heard was consumer-generated innovation. That just sounds so cool to me that we can do it at scale. It's one thing to just take a focus group and go back and do something, but to listen to them on social and digital media and bring innovation to life, that's going to be really fun to see come to fruition. So now let's listen to Lori about the biggest opportunities for ELF in 2025.
Right now in the US, we are number one in unit sales, number two in dollar sales, with, in striking distance of trying to become number one. The first thing I would say is that we have a really global community. And one of the things that you may have seen with ELF is that we typically have a really strong pent-up demand for us before we actually go into the market. So this to lead to my first answer, which is international. International is a big opportunity for us this year, I would say, and going forward. Just in Q3 alone, our international sales grew 66%. And we've had international sales of 55% CAGR over the last 5 years. So we have, and also anchored to that is the fact that our international penetration is only at 18%. When you look at actually some of the global market leaders, it's actually the inverse is true, right? They're probably around 70% penetration. So we've got a lot of runway. We're currently in 15 countries globally, and we see phenomenal reception internationally everywhere we go, increasing rank in every country that we currently launch in. So I would say that's really a key opportunity for us. We also have the opportunity to deepen penetration in the markets that we're already in. We're in 15 countries, as I mentioned, and meeting the consumer where they are. And also, I would say building skincare and continuing to operate on this global heart, just to bring heart back into this, with a local nuance is what we see as an opportunity.
Penetration into other countries, but also deeper into the ones that they're in. This is a good lever for all companies to pull right now, focusing on winning new buyers. So a question for all of you: are you where your consumer is?
All right. I actually think that is the perfect provocative question to end this webinar on. Kara and I want to thank Lori and John for joining us and sharing their time and their insights on how they achieved their volume growth. I want to congratulate all of the 2024 Circana Growth Leaders. And as a reminder, this is a bit of a teaser campaign until we release the report. Therefore, we won't be posting the deck. We will answer any questions in the platform after the conference, the webinar. And if you're coming to our conference, the summit, the first week of April, please do attend our breakout on growth leaders. If you miss it, no problem. We will be officially releasing the report Wednesday, April 9th. So please stay tuned for that. Until then, thank you so much for attending today, and cheers.